Hey guys, it's Godbars here, the self-proclaimed hip-hop historian, and this is the 50th episode of my series where I grab a vinyl from my collection, talk about why I love it, what impact it had, and what its place is in the grand scheme of hip-hop. So as I mentioned before, it's kind of hard to do a special video for the 50th one since I've already been doing such beloved personal favorites. But while my top 50 list for this year is still a little while away, what I can do this time is share another game-changing album. And this Cleveland classic happens to share my birth year, East 1999 by Bone Thugs and Harmony. This legendary crew was made up of five members: Busy Bone, Lazy Bone, Crazy Bone, Wishbone, and Flesh and Bone. They first started making noise in the early 90s with their speedy melodic flows, and they caught the attention of a certain West Coast legend, but I'll get back to that in a little bit. Well, it was the production of acts like DJ Spanish Fly and 3 6 Mafia that really kind of laid the groundwork for the dark SoundCloud rap that came out of Florida and parts of the South in the mid to late 2010s. Bone Thugs and Harmony had just as big a hand through their influential flows and delivery styles. I was in high school at the time, and acts like Suicide Boys, Puya, and the rest of the G59 camp were massive. Some people may not realize that this is where Denzel Curry really cut his teeth, and he was one of Florida's most promising rappers in 2013 with Nostalgic 64. Guys like Ramirez, Ghostmane, Chris Travis, and Xavier Wolf all were clearly inspired not just by the style of production that Juicy J and DJ Paul coined, but also the choppy, fast flows that them and Bone Thugs helped pioneer. You can hear this impact the most when you listen to Lord Infamous, who I think is one of the most influential rappers in the game who doesn't really get his due credit for it. While there was some debate and even problems over who actually pioneered this sound between Bone Thugs and 3 6, I feel like it's safe to say most people who were inspired by one probably enjoyed and admired the other as well. You also have to mention guys who kind of helped bridge this gap between the 90s and 2010s acts, like Space Ghost Perp or Lil Ugly Mane. While Bone Thugs had great production, great might even be an understatement when it comes to the beats on East 1999, their influence on the modern scene is mainly in flow, enunciation, and overall delivery. If you throw on virtually any Suicide Boys or Ghost Main song, and then any song off this thing, it's impossible to not hear the similarities. That isn't to say you can't also hear the groundwork being built on their first two albums. Both Faces of Death and Creepin' on the Come Up are worth your time. I just personally feel like their third album in 1995 is where they really found their sound. Creepin' on a Come Up actually has a couple pretty iconic songs despite its shorter runtime, like Thuggish Ruggish Bone and For the Love of the Money, which featured their mentor Eazy-E. But the following album wouldn't just be their best work in my opinion, it also has some of their biggest hits like The Crossroads, First of the Month, and Mr. Bill Collector. Speaking of Eazy-E, he was a big part in the jump of quality Bone Thugs would make from their first to second album. By signing them to Ruthless Records when they were basically totally unknown and only had the debut out, Easy would act as a mentor to the various members, executive producing their albums, and his death was one of the main inspirations for The Crossroads, which is easily the most famous and well-known song by Bone Thugs despite its difficult subject matter. Another accolade you have to give them is being the only rap group to work with both Tupac and Biggie as far as I'm aware. While I insinuated earlier that their production wasn't necessarily as influential as their style of rapping, that doesn't mean it hasn't aged insanely well. Practically every beat on here is amazing. They're either sinister and grimy, serene and infectious, or even a bit more downtrodden at times. There's one track that has a couple guest appearances who come in the form of Poetic Hustlers and Graveyard Shift on the diss track Towards the Dog Pound that closes out the album. This wouldn't be the only beef Bone Thugs dealt with at the time, though. The infamous back and forth between them and various Memphis artists got scathing disses sent their way, most notably 3 6 Mafia's Live by Your Rep and Tommy Wright III's Thuggish Ruggish Bustas. I already talked about that a bit more in my Mystic Styles review, so if you want to learn more about the connection between Bone Thugs and Memphis, be sure to check that video out. It's honestly a bit of a shame when you imagine an alternate universe where 3 6 collaborated with Bone Thugs opposed to going to war with them. I think it's one of the only aspects of hip hop culture I'm conflicted about because while some of my favorite rap songs are disses by Psalm 1, Masta Ace, Ice Cube, or Spice One, it doesn't feel as fun or for the culture when the two parties are just bitter towards each other for decades. As much as I love all the diss tracks, I think in a lot of cases I'd trade them to hear the beefing artists work together. I honestly think a lot of rappers who've been beefing for a long time can learn from Cameron and Mace, who've not just put aside their differences, but have made a show together. East 1999 was definitely the most successful album in Bone Thugs' discography, selling over 300,000 copies in the first week and topping the US Billboard 200 for 2 weeks in a row. But even if that wasn't the case and it was the worst selling Bone Thugs album, I'd still love it because it's ridiculously consistent for an album with 17 tracks. I think it's really impressive when an artist can release over an hour of material and you can walk away not feeling like there was any filler. That's definitely how I feel here, and I also think it was an important early example of the idea that you don't necessarily have to be from New York or California to be part of hip hop or help push it forward. I've talked about how the South had that barrier of entry into the culture as well, and struggled for a while to get people to take them seriously. Cleveland obviously isn't some little unknown town in the middle of nowhere, and of course there's other famous rappers from there, but practically all of them followed the success of Bone Thugs and Harmony. To my knowledge, there really weren't any superstars in hip hop to come from Ohio and rise to fame prior to their debut, which helped show you could really be from anywhere and still participate in the genre if you cared about it. It's pretty crazy that all five talented, like minded members happened to come from the same place and then decided to pursue their dream of making it in the rap game, despite not really having any hip hop role models from their city yet, or even state to use as a reference and look up to. For my three favorite songs here, I've narrowed it down to Crept and We Came, The Crossroads, and Mo Murda. I do have a lot of songs to recommend as honorable mentions, though, like the title track, the introduction, Eternal, Down 71, or The Getaway, Land of the Heartless, Die Die Die, and Shots to the Double Glock. Thank you for watching my 50th video. I really appreciate anybody who's made it this far in the journey with me. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and let me know what your favorite songs off of this classic are. Don't forget to have a great day, and I'll see you next time, okay? Alright.